Hey class, welcome to lecture 2 for church history. Um, First of all, I want to correct something that I said during lecture 1. I made a lot of references to Ignatius and the apostolic succession and the theology around that. It's not Ignatius actually, it's Irenaeus. So if you have any questions or like exams or anything about that, don't put Ignatius, put Irenaeus. So yeah, sorry about that. But let's get on to lecture 2. Lecture 2 is going to move out of the active persecution of the early Christian church and into an uneasy symbiotic relationship between the church and the state. But before we get to that, I want to step back a few feet and give you a few comments about early Christian heresy that's going to help you as you begin to write your Cyprian paper, which is going to be due. So Cyprian is an interesting character in that he lives during a persecution, and many Christians during this time lapse, and they say, I'm not a Christian, like, I'll sacrifice to the gods, I'll be a Roman citizen, I won't do anything that causes me to be persecuted any longer. After the persecution ends, Cyprian has to decide what he's going to do with all of these people that have sworn allegiance to the emperor and said, we curse God and die, or whatever. So as you're reading through that primary source document, that's kind of the background information that you need to be aware of as you're writing it and trying to get into Cyprian's head to see what he's thinking and how he's interacting. Also, later on, you're going to come across a group called the Donatists, who are also interacting with the same problem that Cyprian is, except they're going to say the church should be completely pure, it shouldn't have any blemishes in it, it shouldn't have any people that aren't willing to die for Christianity, and they're going to be pretty militant in the way that they try to enforce their idea of the church upon larger Christendom as a whole. So be aware of those guys. Donatists will also interact heavily with St. Augustine, who you'll get to know in this lecture as well. He is probably one of the top 5 characters in church history that you should be aware of. So be sure that you read him closely when you get to him in the books. Lastly, I want to focus on the reign of Constantine. Constantine became emperor of Rome and the Roman Empire somewhere in the area of 310 to 313. That's when he begins to consolidate his power and start knocking off all of his family members and warring factions and things like that. In one of the climactic battles in which he becomes emperor, he has a vision which he attributes to God. And he feels like, well, if God gave me this victory, I shouldn't be persecuting Christians. So what he does is he writes up this thing called the Edict of Toleration, which doesn't explicitly say, we love Christians, we want it to be our state religion. It just says, let's not persecute them anymore, since maybe there's something to this if I won a battle and I became emperor when I had a vision of God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, however you want to define it. So, this is going to cause a lot of problems and questions for early church fathers. Before this, as you're aware, all they had to deal with was persecution. What do Christians do when they're attacked, when they don't have food, when society doesn't accept them? Now, all of a sudden, they're accepted by larger culture. They're not exactly welcomed, but they're not persecuted anymore. And early church fathers are going to struggle with this, and largely the Christian church as a whole for the next 1700 years is going to see and try and figure out how to answer the question of what is a responsible relationship between the church and the government. What should there be? Should there not be any interaction? Should they work together? Are they enemies? All of these questions are going to come up. So that's a huge question to try and answer, and you're going to see that throughout all of the books that you're reading, but this is where it begins. Constantine, early church, Edict of Toleration. Very important. So yeah, in summation, for lecture 2, what do you do with persecuted Christians that have lapsed, new manifestations of heresy, such as the Donatists, new church fathers, such as Augustine, and a incredible change of pace in the way the state interacts with Christianity as a whole, due to, in large part, Constantine and his Edict of Toleration. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to give me an email. Good luck with your papers this week, and I look forward to reading them. Thanks.